One. Hello and welcome to Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Joining me today is David Ferguson, who is director with CBRE Hotels. Thanks for joining us today, David.
It's my pleasure. Happy to join you.
All right, we're going to talk about the hotel industry in Calgary. Obviously, no secret that the hotel industry, no matter where you are in the country, felt some pain in the past year. Just looking at a recent report that you folks put out, it showed occupancy levels in Calgary were 63% in 2018, 61% in 2019, but here's the kicker, 24% in 2020. Obviously, it must have been a painful experience for the industry last year.
Absolutely. Again, as soon as the lockdowns and global pandemic really took effect on or about the second week of March, again, international travel stopped almost immediately. Domestic travel stopped almost immediately. And regardless of what sector you're in, whether it was crew travel or business travel or leisure travel, everything really ground to a halt almost immediately in that month. And then, of course, as the year progressed, we had various intervals where restrictions were eased. People started to move about again, but then restrictions were brought back in with greater force. And of course, that led many parts of the country, including in Calgary, where everybody went right back into staying home and not staying overnight unless it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, so I guess the industry, was impacted obviously by the tourism. A lot of people, not coming. Obviously, a lot, obviously Calgary and has those synergies with Banff and Canmore as well, right? But one of the other aspects I think that a lot of people tend to forget is the cross-border visitations by business people, right? Yes. Calgary, especially in the oil and gas industry. So that must have been tough to see as well for the industry, not having that traffic.
Absolutely. People often focus on leisure travel or tourist travel when they think about, the impacts of instances like what we're going through. But again, I remind people frequently, Sunday to Thursday traffic is a completely different dynamic for a good part of the year. And in Calgary's case, Edmonton's case, of course, as well. Yes, absolutely. You need business travel, you need meeting conference travel. And in Calgary's instance, you're right, those strong connections to cities like Houston, Denver, Minneapolis, for example, Chicago. Again, that cross-border activity did not happen. It fell off completely, almost immediately, which, it not only impacts the downtown core, but it also impacts all of the suburban markets in Calgary as well.
Yeah. Now the report, looked ahead and predicted, the occupancy to be around 27% for this year. Why? I was going to say why the optimism, but at least some positive there that we're going to see some growth this year.
Yeah, well, again, the challenge with forecasting, obviously, in this instance, is it's so different, the dynamics of what's happening from other downturns. Whether it's when there's an energy price downturn, there's a little bit of predictability as to what's going to happen. But with the pandemic, of course, what was difficult to, and a lot of people still don't know, is when are the borders going to reopen? When do we reach vaccination targets that allow us to ease restrictions, for example, as well? So as those things tend to come forward, our guidance for the forecasting that we've been doing in the last little while has been that, by year end, we will have border restrictions eased. Most of the domestic travel restrictions will be eased as well. But the reality is, in the short term, where we believe that there'll be an uptick in domestic leisure travel, the bigger challenge is going to be that it's too late to bring a lot of meetings or conferences back because of the length of time that's required for planning. Business travel, a lot of companies still haven't provided any guidance to their people as to when will we go from having virtual meetings to going to Calgary and get back in on the ground, boots on the ground, if you will, and then get those meetings happening. So there's going to be a bit of a time lag for all of that type of travel to happen. And, when you get into the latter part of the year, when you get into Novembers and Decembers, there's usually a little bit of downturn in corporate travel anyway at that time of year. There's always a downturn in leisure travel, just because of the weather and changing over from spring, summer to winter activities. So again, it's going to be a challenging slog for Calgary for the rest of the year, as we do believe that there'll be some uptick in demand, but it's going to take a while to recover.
Okay. What about in terms of the supply out there, David? What can you tell me about the supply situation in Calgary?
Yeah.
Or, in
Well,
a normal time, or do we have enough hotels during normal time?
yeah, the inventory of rooms in Calgary, if you look at sort of 2016 through 2020 inclusive, Calgary added in the vicinity of 2,500 more rooms to the inventory across the city. So that was a challenge that Calgary was actually facing prior to COVID, was how do you cope with all of this new room supply that comes in?
Mm.
So I think what's going to happen in the short term is that we will probably, with the exception of a couple of projects that are in development right now, we probably will see the pipeline of new construction in Calgary slow a little bit. I think that the lending community is a little bit gun shy and wanting to get involved with, financing some new projects, and developers are going to want to, kind of suss out what the timeline is going to be for recovery. So I think that you'll probably see a little bit of a slowdown in terms of new room supply across the city. Again, there are some projects in development now that their timetables have slowed or they've stalled somewhat, and that's actually common in a lot of markets across the country. But I think in the short term, you might see a little bit of a slowdown in development interest in building there, and that would give the industry, actually, the good news it would give to the existing industry there is it helps with the recovery, because they're not faced with not only dealing with fighting for pieces of existing business, but not fighting with new supply coming in to their markets.
Yeah. What about it from an investment point of view? What's the feel there these days for that?
Well, I think knowledgeable investors of Western Canada, and particularly the dynamics of Alberta and Calgary, will probably try to do their own assessments of, what is the recovery timeline? When will more capital investment in the energy sector come back, for example, as well? And as that happens, that has always historically been tied to recovery or hotel performance in Calgary. We will definitely see a pickup of international visitors wanting to get out to the Rockies, as you mentioned before, or getting out to, Drumheller or other points within the province. So from the investment community, I think there certainly is a faction in the investment community. They're looking for bargain opportunities or distressed assets to acquire in Calgary. But my colleagues in brokerage, I think there's still a bit of a gap between the bid and the ask that's preventing some people getting involved with investing in existing assets in Calgary right now.
Yeah. Okay. Super. Well, thanks very much, David, for your time today.
All right. It was wonderful to speak to you. Thank you.
All right. Super. That was David Ferguson, who is director with CBRE Hotels. This has been Business Insider with Mario Toneguzzi on YYC Business. Thanks for joining us today.